I woke up to the soft hiss of something frying. For a second, I didn't know where I was. The sheet smelled like him, the air warm with last night's secrets. Then I turned my head, and there he was, standing in my tiny kitchen, barefoot, shirtless, humming to himself as if nothing had changed between us. Except everything had. My mouth was dry, my heart still pounding out a leftover rhythm from what we'd done, or maybe from the fact that daylight was making it real. He wasn't just my friend anymore. Not after how I'd clung to him on the couch, after the way we'd stumbled down the hallway, drunk enough to forget our promises but sober enough to remember every shiver. And now he was cracking eggs, muscles shifting under skin I'd tasted only hours ago. He didn't look at me. Maybe he didn't know I was awake, or maybe he was pretending not to see me hiding behind my own tangled hair and the knot in my throat. I pulled the blanket higher, half of me wanting to sink into the mattress and vanish, the other half wanting to crawl across the floor just to feel his skin under my lips again. He glanced over his shoulder then, caught me staring. His smile was too calm, too easy, like he hadn't ruined my sense of boundaries in one reckless night. "Morning," he said, voice low and scratchy from sleep and leftover whiskey. I wanted to answer. Instead, I just lay there, heartbeat tapping at my ribs, tasting the memory of his mouth and wondering if he felt the same ache twisting in my stomach. Because God help me, I wasn't ready for breakfast. I was still starving for him. He turned back to the stove like my silence didn't burn. I watched the way his shoulders flexed when he reached for the pepper, how a faint line of freckles ran down his spine, tiny constellations I'd mapped with my fingertips when we thought no one would ever know. Funny how last night felt like some beautiful, drunken accident, a tangle of laughter, spilled wine, and his mouth finding mine when I shouldn't have let it. He was my friend. The one who knew my worst breakups, who held my hair back when I cried over men who didn't deserve me. And yet here he was, whistling like we were something normal. Like we hadn't crossed a line so deep I could still feel it humming in my bones. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from a friend asking if I got home safe. I almost laughed. Safe was the last word for how I felt. He had broken something open in me, a door I'd spent years barricading behind jokes and late-night secrets. He glanced over again, caught me pretending to check my phone instead of looking at his back like it was some holy thing. He smirked. "You hungry?" he asked. It was such an innocent question. But my skin prickled under the blanket, remembering how he'd murmured almost the same words against my neck last night, voice soaked in whiskey and want. I tried to sound casual. "Starving." His grin told me he heard exactly what I didn't say. He plated the eggs, leaned against the counter, and for a heartbeat, the morning felt more dangerous than the night ever did. I wondered if he regretted it. If he'd wash the dishes, pull on his shirt, and walk out like none of this meant anything. I didn't know if I wanted him to stay, or if I'd beg him to leave before I fell any deeper. But I did know one thing, I couldn't look away. He brought the plate over, set it on the nightstand next to my phone, then stood there, close enough that I could feel the heat of him drift under the blanket. I couldn't decide if I should pull him in or push him away. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said, teasing, but his eyes betrayed him, darker than before, searching my face for something neither of us could say out loud. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, my fingers trembling just a little. "Whose fault is that?" I shot back, voice softer than I meant. He laughed under his breath, but it didn't reach his eyes. He crouched down by the bed, level with me, so close I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the same roughness that had scraped my skin in the dark hours when we stopped pretending. For a second, neither of us moved. I felt the pull, that dangerous gravity between two people who know exactly how the other tastes. My chest tightened, my lips parted like a question I was too proud to ask. He lifted his hand. I thought he'd touch my cheek, but he stopped short, fingers hovering a breath away from my skin. "I should go," he whispered. But his voice betrayed him. It shook. I hated how much that word stung. Go. Like this was still a mistake, like the only way to fix us was to pretend it never happened. But the ache under my ribs said it was already too late for that. He stood. I grabbed his wrist without thinking, my palm wrapping around the warmth of him, the pulse fluttering there like mine. "Stay," I breathed. It slipped out raw, a confession I couldn't swallow back. He looked at me, really looked, and I saw the fight he was losing behind those sleepy, storm-colored eyes. The room felt too small for the hunger swelling between us. I didn't care if it ruined everything. I wanted to be ruined. By him. Again. He didn't answer me with words. He just let out a breath, sharp and shaky, then sank back to his knees beside the bed, so close I could smell the faint trace of coffee and sleep clinging to his skin. His hand found mine under the blanket. Our fingers tangled, warm and clumsy, as if we were back in that drunken blur of confessions and kisses that should have stayed secrets. "Last night," he murmured, voice cracking on the edge of something almost guilty. "Tell me you don't regret it." I didn't trust my voice. So I answered the only way I could. I leaned forward, letting the blanket slip from my shoulder, and pressed my mouth to his. Soft at first, tasting him slowly, reminding myself he was real and here in mine, at least for now. His lips parted against mine. I felt him exhale into me, felt the shiver that started in his shoulders and spilled into my own bones. His hand slipped up my arms, gentle but insistent, as if he needed to relearn every inch of me in daylight. The kiss deepened. He tasted like toast in sleep and the echoes of last night's whiskey. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every thought dissolved under the rush of skin and breath and the quiet, desperate sounds I hadn't meant to make. When we pulled back, we didn't go far. His forehead rested against mine, our breaths tangling in the small space we hadn't yet surrendered. "Say it," he whispered. His thumb traced my wrist where my pulse betrayed everything I tried to hide. "I don't regret it," I said, breathless, reckless, trembling with a truth too big for my chest. "I just don't know what happens now." He smiled, sad and hungry all at once. "Neither do I." But his mouth found mine again, and in that moment, the question didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the slow burn waking under my skin, the way he tasted like trouble I'd choose again and again. Somewhere between his mouth and my heartbeat, the rest of the world vanished. He pushed the breakfast plate aside, eggs forgotten, hunger redirected, focused entirely on the way my breath caught when his hand slid under the blanket to find my waist. I should have felt shy in the bright, merciless morning light. Instead, every soft ray spilling through the window seemed to make him look at me harder, like he wanted to memorize how my skin flushed and how my eyes fluttered when he traced the edge of my hip with his thumb. "You're shaking," he murmured against my collarbone, voice muffled by the way he pressed kisses there, slow, unhurried, each one pulling another shiver from my spine. "Because you're still here," I confessed. It slipped out before I could hide it. He froze for a heartbeat, then pulled back just enough to see my face. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. The question was raw, almost boyish, as if he needed me to say out loud what my body was already begging for. I didn't answer. I just reached for him, fisting my fingers in the hair at the nape of his neck and tugging him down until his mouth crashed into mine again. He tasted like relief, like a promise that we were about to ruin the last piece of distance left between us. He pressed me deeper into the mattress, one knee nudging between mine, and my breath caught in my throat at how familiar and new he felt all at once. The same man who used to tease me over bad dates now breathing curses into my skin like I was the only thing worth breaking for. When he pulled back, both of us gasping, his forehead dropped to mine, and he laughed, breathless, a little disbelieving. "This is so damn stupid," he murmured, but his hips pressed closer and every nerve in my body sparked at the contact. I laughed too, tangled my fingers in his hair, and whispered, "Then don't stop being stupid with me." And just like that, the last piece of last night's caution burned away in the quiet heat of the morning. It didn't feel like a mistake anymore. Not when his hand slid under my back, lifting me closer, not when my breath caught entangled with his, our bodies fitting together like a confession too long buried under late-night jokes and half-true smiles. Every time he pulled back, I dragged him closer again, greedy for the weight of him, the taste of him, the small, hushed sounds that only I could pull from his throat. It felt like we were erasing the last lines between friend and something more, rewriting every memory we'd ever laughed about in bars, turning it into something raw and warm and terrifyingly real. He whispered my name into my neck like a secret. I answered with my nails at his shoulders, a shiver rolling down my spine so deep I almost laughed at how alive he made me feel, messy, exposed, starving for things I'd sworn I didn't need from him. I didn't know how long we stayed like that, caught between kisses and breathless, broken sentences. I only knew that the sun kept climbing the wall behind him, lighting up his hair, making him look softer than he had any right to be. At some point he brushed a strand of hair off my cheek, his thumb tracing my flushed skin, and he just stared. No teasing, no grin. Just that look, the one that said maybe this was always meant to happen. "Hey," he murmured, voice thick, fingers tightening at my waist. "We should eat before this gets cold." I laughed, half a sigh, half a moan of protest when he started to pull away. "I don't care about the eggs," I whispered. He kissed me one more time, slow and lingering, tasting like a promise he didn't know how to keep yet. "Good," he breathed against my lips. "Because I'm not leaving. Not today." And in that stolen second, tangled sheets, half-finished breakfast, and the boy who used to be just a friend, I realized I didn't want him to ever leave again. Some mistakes taste too good to regret.